We're back at the $1 million pool. You've seen us excavate this whole site, build up 20-foot tall retaining walls, pack everything with steel, backfill it all, build up our piers, over 2,000 bags of fill dirt. Then we had to tear it all up, put in all of our plumbing, pass all of our inspections, which leads us today. And in this video, you're gonna see us pour the foundation for the $1 million pool Phase 2 edition. All right, as you guys can see, Victor and the crew, they're tidying up a bunch of details. They're actually putting up a series of forms because we have a really cool feature. It's a little bit of a sunken living room. There's about 4 steps down, like in the same space, in that foundation we're pouring. We have to set up those forms, and you see how there's those stakes. They're at that kind of diagonal 45-degree angle, and that comes down into the lower slab. So they have to set that up. We're gonna pour that top part first, and then once that dries and sets a little bit, we'll break that form, get all of that wood out of there, and then pour the lower portion. If you see, there's bricks under our rebar that are elevating that rebar off of that ground floor on top of that plastic poly. So this is really important because if you don't have those bricks, your rebar is just gonna be in the lowest portion of the concrete and all your concrete's gonna be up here. We need that rebar in the middle of that concrete because it's the stitching that holds it all together. And like, this is just something that if you don't have it, our engineer is gonna fail us before the pre-pour. When we do remodels and additions, when you have an existing slab meeting a new slab, what we do is it's called doweling in. So we take like a smooth dowel, which is basically just a smooth piece of rebar. We drill into the existing slab, and then we use what's called Hilti high strength epoxy. And we fill that hole with epoxy and we shove those dowels into there. So then that dowel is attached to the existing slab, and now it's attached to the new slab. And again, that's that stitching. We want to try to keep them moving together. Okay, so the guys have a method to their madness. You don't just go out there and just shoot the concrete wherever. What we like to do is shoot the concrete into the deepest portions first. So first up is all of our pier locations, because those go from the top of our slab about 20 feet down into bedrock, right? So we want to fill those all the way up. So they're going to go around, fill up about 6 to 8 piers that we have, and then we can start on the rest of the slab. All of this is for that air pocket management. You'll see the guys, as they're shooting into the piers, they put the vibrator down right after it. And then watch, when you see all those bubbles come up, that's a bunch of air pockets coming out of that concrete. And this is really important, right? Because we want all of our concrete sitting with no gaps on top of each other. So it's really nice and firm, and then it's all gonna harden. We want to make sure that we're getting those air pockets out of every place that we pour, because we don't want those pockets, because if you have an air pocket, that is part of your slab that can crumble later. So getting those out is also really important and is always a vital part of the pour. Something I always love seeing is the pump truck, and it is really just a modern marvel. Our favorite to use is the boom pump, and it's that kind of mechanical elephant arm that comes out and shoots concrete. But if you remember, we're too close to the power lines on this size to use it, so we're using what's called the line pump. And that's pumping all the way from 50 feet below down to the street, all the way up into our slab. And if you just look at this pump truck, it is moving tons and tons of earth and stone and rock, and it's really quite a complex machine. And honestly, you need to get a great pump operator. If you have problems with your pump on pour day, the liability of all your concrete sitting there, you might have to waste concrete, you have to call the trucks away, you're wasting money. You need to make sure that you have a great pump crew, and that if something goes wrong, they're on top of it, because if not, it's gonna be your ass. Okay, moving on from those piers, we start with the full perimeter of the foundation, and then we work our way inward. And again, this is just an easy way to manage and make sure that all of our concrete is level, has the least amount of air pockets as possible. And it's just a great way to fill everything up at the same ratio, so you don't have a high point over here and a low point over there and concrete drying at different times. So watch the guys as they're working. It's kind of like mowing a lawn, where you're kind of going back and forth and filling up all those parts, remember, at an equal ratio. And we're doing all of that before we actually get to the top portion of that slab. That's the actual slab portion. Everything else is all of these grade beams, and they eat so much concrete along the way. But you want to make sure that everything's good and packed before you start working on that top layer, and then we're going to bring the finishers in. Okay, so I just want to reiterate why we're leaving those forms up to pour that upper layer first. Because this concrete at that bottom and the top level, this is really finished floor height. You know, obviously we're gonna have some wood flooring on top of it. So you see where all those stakes are coming down, we can't pour concrete around those and leave them. So we have to break those forms and pull them off before we can pour that bottom layer. This is a good time to use 3D renders to show y'all what this addition is gonna look like. It's a 2-story addition. There's a game room and a second master suite below, and then the main master suite above. Derek, our videographer, what he does is he takes the 3D files from our architect and then he overlays those onto our videos, and we're gonna use this all across the board. When we have plumbing plans, electrical plans, framing plans, floor plans, we're gonna overlay this on the video and we're gonna piece it together in a Sims-like Fortnite fashion to where you guys can see how we're constructing these homes. I don't see any other channels doing stuff like this, so you wanna hit that subscribe button, and I cannot wait to showcase what we're gonna be able to do with this awesome 3D technology. Now we're on to the interior portion of the grade beams, and you can see the guys pouring away. This pour alone took about 9 trucks of concrete, and each truck has about 10 tons in it. So you do the math, about 90 tons of concrete. It always blows my mind how much earth and concrete that we're using on these sites. So you can see them pouring through the interior grade beams. You use a series of different vertical rebars that are held together by these kind of hooks. That's called a stirrup. And it's like a C that wraps around that whole area, and then it holds that grade beam portion together, and then you drop it all inside that grade beam, and that's gonna be all the rebar that's holding those deep beams together. When we are getting to that top portion of the actual slab, you're gonna see the finishing crews start to come in. So we're gonna be pouring in one area, and then when it gets to the top, the finishers take over. And I love the finishing crews. And what's awesome about these crews is they are all specialized crews. So these guys are really apart from all of us and Victor and the guys. We are always gonna bring in a finishing crew. We like to bring in the same one, but sometimes they're busy and there's alternates that we can bring in. We have Victor and the guys, the workhorses, putting together all the rebar, putting up our wood forms, pouring the concrete, and now the artists come in and they're smoothing out the concrete. This is also really difficult because it's a race against time. There's this period where the concrete is really workable. And when it first goes in, it's kind of really wet, and then it starts hardening and hardening. And if you underwork it or overwork it, your whole slab is screwed. And the first thing they're doing is really screeding this concrete, which is just trying to get it level. They're gonna get a long flat board, and a few of them are gonna go across, and they're gonna kind of push the concrete as they go for a rough level. Then they're gonna come back with that long mop, kind of Swiffer looking tool. This is called a bull float, or as the guys like to call it, the mappa. So when you come with the bull float, there is a chain on it, and when you twist it one way, it pulls it up, and when you twist it the other way, it pushes it down. So they want to twist it to pull it up as they're pushing away, and then they want to twist it down to pull it back to them as they're coming back and forth. And this right here, it looks simple. It is such a delicate task. And these guys, when you talk to them, they've been doing this craft since they were like 15, helping their fathers and their grandfathers. And this is just so impressive to me, like how awesome these guys are. And then once they're like making their passes with the bull float, it's pretty nice and level. But now we need to bring in the power trowel, the concrete helicopter, the big spinny, fanny, hovercrafty thing, whatever you want to call it. Let's start off with getting a machine that's a couple 100 pounds, 20 feet up to the top of this slab. First, the guys are gonna build some scaffolding, and then they use a series of chains and pulleys to hoist this machine up. It never ceases to amaze me how they can problem solve, what they can build, and the obstacles they can overcome. And I just want to shout out to the guys. Something like this, it seems simple, but man, it is dangerous. If you drop that machine, like just think about all the different things that happen, let alone the damage to the machine. I'm always in awe of the guys and their ability to just keep going and figure everything out. I freaking love it. So what this machine does, it's literally a fan, and it's angled to where it's just skimming the top of the concrete. What it's really doing is just troweling everything and really flattening and hardening that surface and getting it to where now you go from that bull float level finish to the power trowel, which is like a much harder, really refined level surface. And they're just gonna keep going over that. Having a finished slab that's gonna hold up for years to come is the most priceless thing there is. You try to cheap out, you are not gonna be a happy camper. Just take my advice and save yourself the pain. Now we're ready to move down to that lower portion, and using the cooking metaphor, are we ready to break this form? Is this concrete still too wet that when this form comes off, it's just gonna slump down? So we wanna make sure that we're in a really good spot. So we break those forms out, everything's looking good, they're kind of tidying up, troweling after it, and then the same process is happening. They're gonna fill up that pier in the lower portion, and then we're back at it, rinse and repeat. We're gonna do the perimeter first of all those grade beams, work into the interior grade beams, and then get to the final top portion of the slab, and the finishers are gonna take back over. So I just wanna reiterate, there's some trades that are very scientific. Concrete, there is some science to it on like what we're building, but then there's just this finesse. It's just similar to like a plaster or a stucco, and there's just an art to it. All right, well, another successful day. The guys are finishing out the bottom portion of that slab. What a journey this has been. This slab for phase 2 alone is absolutely gigantic, but in comparison to the $1 million pool, it's not monstrous, but it's something that we're very, very proud of. And I'm not surprised that everything went well, but you also cannot overlook the fact of all the hard work and the engineering and the inspections and the backbreaking labor that we did to get here. So as we've done in the past, here is the entire process from start to finish in a 1-minute time lapse. As always, thank you guys so much for following along. It really means the world to me. Our following is growing every day. I love interacting with you guys. I love the comments. I love the questions. Keep it all coming. As I've said, we have some insane projects coming up. I can't wait to unveil those as we kick each one of them off. You will not be sorry that you subscribed to this channel. I appreciate you guys. See you on the next one.